Good day, everybody. How's it going out there? Well, this is April, and in April, apparently, the curator of the Furry Museum wanted to talk about censorship, and I think it's a good opportunity for me to do the same. So around the museum, the curator of the museum had put up a bunch of censor bars and also descriptions on items that he had received on trying to basically curtail what was displayed. And in the elements of that and in the interest of that, I do want to go over the topic a little more broadly. I'm not a member of this museum or anything like that, or any promoter or any defamer of any institution, but I do think it's a good opportunity to talk about the topic because it is in a creative community, particularly, the concepts of censorship, come up quite a bit. But also, I want to bring up like how sometimes people can perceive things that may not necessarily be censorship as censorship, and also an element, and I'll conclude as to why I feel that is. So in order to do this, we're going to do this video in two parts because there's a lot of stuff to read through. There's going to be a lot of stuff to go over. There's a video playing behind me that you see when you first enter the museum. You can also see that video, and the video is sort of a tongue-in-cheek play on sort of the situations that he's talking about when it comes to when he was told to censor the things. I would recommend watching that video first in certain ways because it helps understand what items I'm looking at that are getting, censored by the curator of the museum in this sort of item. So, because one of the criticisms, and we'll go over our critiques, I should say, that I have of this display currently is that outside of the video, it's hard to tell what the museum used to look like before he put up the censorship displays. So it could be hard to tell what exactly is being censored unless you read through the text. And then even then, it's like, well, what did this display look like, right? So for instance, like this one is one of the ones he quote unquote censored for being like quadruped. And this is sort of a play on like sort of the person who talked to him about why they want it censored. The character in this skit is called Mary. So if you haven't watched that first, I'd watch that first. But and I'll put a link in the description below to that video. As I said, this is going to be a two-parter. I'm going to do the outside and upstairs and downstairs first because there's not too much going on. It's enough for a good amount of time and coverage, especially when I'm going to go over certain aspects to start with. And then the second part of the video, I'll go inside the bottom floor stuff, which seems to be the majority of the things and gets into more complicated stuff and things like that. So, surface level, let's go. So if you haven't watched the video already, you can, before we start moving along, you can use that video as a reference to the things that are censored as I move along the museum. Also, I did a tour of the museum in an earlier video if you want to use my videos instead. And the museum hasn't changed all that much from there, so you can always look there and do that. But let's first go over a separation of definitions. Because I want to do that first. I think defining things is very important. It makes for a healthy internal dialogue and also dialogue amongst other people you may agree or disagree with. And not in the hodgepodge like debate bro sort of like, oh, that's on homonym, like and stuff like that. Like, no, I'm talking about like definitions of like concepts and what is censorship versus what is critique versus what is criticism. And so I put a little image together for that. So we'll start with that. Is it that? There we go. So there's a wheel, and I covered myself with the wheel. So let me there's the wheel, the cheese wheel. Cheese. So down here's the wheel, our fascinating half a wheel. There's more to it, but we'll get to that in the end because all this museum stuff is just going to cover this part of the wheel. So on your left, my stage right, your left, is critique. Critique, and in the middle you have the yellow criticism, and on the left you have the orange censorship. Now I didn't use red because, as I said, there's more to this wheel on both sides. Spoiler alert. But for this video, we only need to concentrate on these three. Critique is defined as sort of a look at something and neither seeing it as good nor bad, not like trying to say something positive nor negative, but trying to say something in the best interest of kind of improvement, or seeing like that, yeah, this flaw that is being pointed out might be a flaw, and I'm going to list what I think the flaw is, and you could take it or leave it. Now, you have to understand when we're talking about critique and the value of critique, it really comes on a matter of expertise. And expertise is a whole other ball can. So like if somebody's giving you a critique and they have a high expertise, then taking that critique and listening to it and consuming it and processing it through your own process, if you're also interested in these kind of things, can do you well, and that causes growth. As you move forward down the scale, though, expertise doesn't matter as much. So if you get a critique from somebody who's really bad at critique and is not really good at, not really qualified to critique something, it could move into the realm of criticism, even though they're like in their heart they think they're critiquing. It's more like criticism. So what is criticism? Criticism is you're pointing out something is bad, but you're not really explaining why. You can't, like, the person can't explain why or understand why or present something as bad without really explaining why, or even if they explain why, they don't really say how to really improve it, right? How to improve the situation. It's like, this is bad because of this, but I'm not going to tell you what you should do. Instead of this, try to do this, right? Censorship is a little bit more, and that's on your right, my stage left. Censorship is much more candid in that it's like, this is not allowed here, right? This is not allowed here. Now, governments committing censorship is really bad. Individuals committing censorship is a little more, muddied water. It's kind of one of those things where the more power somebody has, the more careful they have to be careful about committing censorship. And spoiler alert, there's more to the wheel. But at the end of the day, it's like censorship on the individual level is neither good nor bad. We all censor. Like furries, like there are definitely furries out there who would not want to go walking around somebody who, wears like some religious philosophy on their sleeve because, they had bad experiences with people with religious philosophies. So they don't like those kind of people. So they try to keep them out of their life, and they will say things in order to, like, they will criticize it in such a way where they hope that the person will censor themselves and leave the room. Right? Some people, and that's another interesting thing about this wheel, is that there is elements where people will present something as criticism, but hope that, it presents itself in such a way that a person will leave or give up or not do something. So that's why, like, when I'm talking about these kind of things, it could get a little muddy and it can get a little ambiguous. And that's why I think a lot of people, I think it's one of the reasons that a lot of people get these three things confused. So to help you with that, these long two videos, I'm going to be going through and I'm going to be kind of trying to categorize like each of these things. Is it critique? Is it criticism? Or is it actually censorship? And in that sense, there's also a lot of gray area, a lot of nuance. You can't just throw one word at it and do that. So there's going to be some explanation as to details as to why I feel it's one of those three things. And then you can critique and criticize and tell me to shut the F up in the comments section. That's how the internet works. Anyways, so to start, we're going to do something non-museum, which is a meme that I had made. So So how it goes is that there's the "don't make me tap the sign" meme. And this is one I made in response to my frustrations on social media as a person who writes nonfiction. Basically the idea, don't make me tap the sign. And this is in response to, like, I'm seeing people posting things that are saying, the media is not talking about this. And then they quote tweet or quote skeet or quote flutter, in my words. They cross post, a thing where they got the information from, and back to the primary source, which is reporting on it. So I posted this, which I would fall under the line of criticism, which is, do not post stating the media is not reporting on something with links immediately proving the media is reporting on that very thing. It makes you look like a moron, and it's disrespectful to the reporters to use their work to claim that they are not working. In other words, like, don't post a thing claiming that no one's talking about it when they're talking about it. It's annoying. And that's why I was being critical and criticism. And this is criticism because I am not really presenting any alternative. I'm just saying this is bad. And I'm kind of being disparaging, right? I'm calling the person a moron. That's disparaging. Now, let's change this to censorship. So do not post this reporting on the same, do not post stating the media is not reporting on something with links immediately proving the media is reporting on that very thing. If I see you doing this, I will block you. Or if I see this on my page, I will publicly shame you and tell all my friends to block you. That's censorship. That is like, if I see you doing this thing, I will remove you from my spaces, right? That's the sort of thing. That's sort of where that would fall under. Now, is it right or is it wrong? If you're a person with no power and you're just a person on the internet walking the waves and curating your own experiences on the internet, is absolutely your right to do. As somebody who's a nonfiction writer in the furry fandom, if I block a furry simply because they posted something or did some action that I didn't really like, it's going to hinder my ability to understand the diversity of perspectives within the fandom. So I would be hurting myself more than I'd be hurting them, in essence. So censorship is a tool, and as an individual, you have the right to use that tool. As a government, you shouldn't have that tool. In fact, the government should have means of censoring the government through the people, right? The people should have the power over the government, not the government having the power of the people. And in this modern age, I'll just say this, in this modern age, we have inverted our power structures a little bit, in that, like, we now are living in the AI world where the computer is supposed to be calling the shots and telling us what to think, and not like the opposite of like us telling the computer this is what we want you to do and it does it. Instead, it's like the computer is telling you that you're wrong, and it's like, I'm not wrong, but the computer is telling you you're wrong, right? So we've inverted our societal sort of power infrastructure, and likewise our government's now saying, well, we're the ones that have the power to censor you. It's like, no, we're the ones that have the power to censor you. The people have the power to censor the government. The government shouldn't be having the power to censor people. And it's been going on for a while and eroding further. But that being said, that's just my opinion on that. That's a critique of our current society. But going back to the thing, let's change this to critique, right? Instead of criticism, we gave an example. It is criticism. We gave an example of changing it to censorship. What does it look like to be what does it look like when it's going to be, what is it? Critique. So critique would be more like, do not post stating that the media is not reporting on something with links immediately proving the media is reporting it on that very thing. Instead, you should support the media that is reporting the things that you appreciate them reporting, by supporting them, by sharing their articles, and by supporting them financially if you can, and encouraging others to do so, right? That is more like instead of complaining that no one's talking about something, instead reward the people who are talking about it. And that's sort of more of a critique, right? Here's a way you can improve this. If you're angry about this, here's a way you can you take that anger and put it into positive action. So that being said, those are your three elements: your critiques, your criticisms, and your censorship. So as we go through these, we're going to be doing that. So without further ado, we've spent about 15 minutes talking about this and introducing the concepts. Now let's put them into practice. We will start in the front here, and then we will go over that. So I'm going to switch to sort of a first-person mode, or I'm going to like flip this over. It's not flying anymore, so we're going to put this into flip this around. Maybe I don't know how to operate this. Maybe I should just turn the camera off. What if I turn this off? There we go. If you get vertigo, be careful. I'll move slow. So I'm going to have to read all this stuff because I think it helps with accessibility. Because some of y'all don't have some of y'all don't have VR chat. And basically, some of you don't have VR chat. And so like I'm going to like read these things off, and then we're going to talk about it. So yes, this display was asked to be censored. An entire museum dedicated to furry history without LGBTQ history felt absurd. Over 80% of the furry fandom identifies as LGBTQ. If there's anything we need to learn, it's our own history as people who strive for acceptance and tolerance over bigotry. Many have learned LGBTQ history from this display and grew even closer to their own identity, but also to each other across fractured lines. However, some people took issue with the fact that the pink triangle originated from Nazi internment camps, and the images of book burnings from the School of Sexology proved a powerful visual in today's political climate. Unfortunately, history is cruel, teacher. The first symbol to represent homosexuals on a national scale was the pink triangle, and the designer of the rainbow flag, Gilbert Baker, mentioned the need for a new image due to the dismal origins of the pink triangle. There was also a particular individual who took offense to the trans people in front of this display. So obviously the person has problems with trans folks, and that's, obviously having problems with people is a problem, because it's like you can't change a person because you want them to change. That's kind of ridiculous. And it's also like, that goes a little bit beyond censorship. As I said, there's like a little bit more to the wheel. We'll talk about it at the end of the second video. So one of the things is like, one of the critique for me, I don't know, like, unless you are familiar with this place and unless you have seen these places before, it's hard to tell what they took affront to. And I don't even know if this particular one was featured on the video. It probably was, which is why I told you to watch it. I can't remember exactly what was on the video. But if you move forward, if you scoot forward and like look around, you can see parts of things. So this is where the triangle was. So the pink triangle and the new flag. So this is where they kind of like read the whole thing. Like, and this is like, this goes into the history of the Nazis and their internment of people who are gay. And so he included GLBTQ history in this. Now, is it furry history? Not necessarily. Like, it goes back before we had conventions and things like that. But there are people who use furry as an expression of GLBTQ identity, and I believe the curator of this museum does himself. So, like, putting this first and foremost is fine. And we're going to go over this about twice. Once here, and I think once in the gaming room in the second video. We'll go over like museums that kind of go a little bit beyond the borders, and kind of like, and because this is the thing, it can't just be, it's like, to talk about furry, you have to, like, just because you're furry doesn't mean you're interested in outside hobbies or you're not interested in outside cultures. There's certain things that furries might be interested in. And I think, like, in history of GLBTQ movements and things like that, I think should be in that regard. So this is, as I said, The person who took offense to trans people is like, you should take it if they said that you should take it down, that's obviously censorship. Taking offense to individuals moves almost beyond censorship in certain circumstances. As I said, we'll go over that later. So this one I could see as censorship. So now, could they say, well, you should, like, I mean, I guess the one critique, there's always like a little caveat. The caveat is like the designer of, if the designer Gilbert Baker said the pink triangle is problematic, right? And he told people to change the GLBTQ flag because that symbol is problematic. At that point, do we want to continue to tie the problematic symbol? And, obviously having an understanding of its history and why it's problematic and things like that is important. No qualms there. But obviously, Gilbert Baker's like saying, well, I want to change the flag because I want to remove the triangle from the history because I think we need to move beyond the Nazis. And, that's an important thing to do. And obviously it's harder to say that when it seems like this sort of ideology that, the sort of fascists had is sort of springing up again. But that being said, I have no personal qualms with it. Obviously, people are going to say their own things, and that's the whole thing about having an audience. So the second thing, music thing wasn't censored. None of the stuff over there was censored. There's also there's actually entrees over here, which is very nice. I didn't think that was here before. Coffee. And I think that's gravity. Oh, no, it doesn't have gravity. Never mind. I lied. The cookies are edible, though. Yum. That was a weird crunch. I might have food poisoning. Anyway, so yes, this article was censored. So for those of you who don't know what this one is, I'm going to move in first here to see what this is, because you can see this. This is a sort of a sketch of Sotalo, and this is Sotalo. So this is the curator of the Virtual Viewer Museum. And so he wanted us to have his videos here to sort of place himself in the front and then sort of show sort of what they're doing here and explain them. That's sort of fine. But we're going to read this one. So yes, this artist was asked to be censored. Over the years, I have been asked to remain quiet on a number of issues and just accept censorship at face value. But after seeing so many censorship requests by the dozens, I've noticed 7 patterns of the requests. They're often, I think he meant to say about minorities or pointed at minorities, or subjects people have an ideological difference of opinion despite evidence otherwise. Logic, scientific, anthropological, or personal. Some people see baby furs as a good excuse to censor the museum as a whole. Others see my willingness to take stories from people they don't like, even if that information is critical to reducing hatred, as a reason to censor me further. Some people see the virtual Furry Museum as self-serving. So, I'll continue and then I'll come back. In truth, my art was never supposed to last in here. It was supposed to be replaced with artists I felt would make more compelling displays in the front image so people can be assured I am genuinely who I say I am. This museum has helped so many people overcome their fears of being a furry, their misconceptions which drove them to hatred. They learned about art, history, and subcultures over which great misunderstandings continue to plague our consciousness and prevent our culture from leaping forward. For many people, the museum and myself represent the acceptance they never received, and my desires for a world of knowledge and compassion are shared among many people, but even the most compassionate people are not above disdain and censorship. It is much easier for many people to cave to the irate Marys of the world and eliminate good people than to tackle intolerance and prejudice head on. Now, there's a lot of additional stuff here. And this, I guess, is just the general opening statement that the person wanted to make rather than, because he's the curator of the museum, so he wanted to put this in here because he's the one being asked to be censored and the museum is being censored and this is why. And he explains, and that the Mary thing ties to the video to complement it. So I understand what he's going for here. I think there is a telling aspect of this, though, that It's two simple sentences, but I think it kind of ties a little bit about. Some people see the virtual furry museum as self-serving. In truth, my art was never supposed to be last in here. It was supposed to be replaced with artists I felt would be more compelling displays. So those sentences together maybe go like that. There is an element of critique that he has received that kind of a little bit rubs the curator a little bit raw. And that is mentioning like, oh, you put yourself on display. Now, I will agree with him, and he mentions it in here. It's like putting himself up front here as a thing is kind of important because he's a curator of the museum, and this is his art, and this is his character. But let's take a second here and go upstairs. Because that one is used 2 more times. This wall, yes, this artist has to be censored, and it's the same exact wording. So some people see furry self-serving. In truth, my art was never supposed to last in here. It was supposed to be replaced with artists. Then over here, same one. So, some people see virtual. So that one, and the one up front are all the same. And why? Because if I zoom in here, actually this one I can't. Oh, no, I saw it for a second. So there's abstract ink, Sotalo. Some of it you can see some of the things, you can't see others. I think you can see these ones just fine. But yeah, this one, Sotalo. So this is all the artist's work. So when it comes to like Sotalo, so he's saying like, I didn't mean for my art to be on this wall for a long period of time. I wanted to replace it with something else. And that's fine. I'm sure there's artists who you can find, or maybe a thing that you can find. Keeping yourself up front, that's fine. You can make yourself smaller if you're afraid that people will think you have an ego. My suggestion would be, if you do find new things to put up, instead of expanding downstairs more, if you really are in good faith trying to replace, these things that you're saying will make people think that the museum is self-serving, move Mr. Row Clown over here, which congratulations, Row Clown. Excuse me. Sorry. Laugh it up. I burped, okay? So, Mr. Clown, congratulations. No one asked to censor the clown. But yes, Ro's art can be moved like over here, closer to this one, and then this section can be moved to this corner, and then maybe make like a display in this corner, like not one that just like hugs the wall, but one that actually pops out a little bit or something like that. That would be kind of the suggestion I would have. If that really is like a criticism / critique / ask for censorship that you took to heart. Now, obviously, people have asked to have things taken down. We're going to go over that in a little bit. Other than obviously Sotalo's work himself, but obviously, like Sotalo sounds like if somebody had criticized, like you have too much of your own work up here, like I think he's taken that to heart. And it does sound like he wants to make those changes. So in essence, that's not really censorship as much as it is critique. And I think it's critique that he agrees with a little bit, subconsciously maybe, but I think he agrees with it. And so if that's the case, then like, what's the problem? All right. So let's see what else we got up here. We have that one, I think. So I'll first congratulate this whole section of the museum because this is the cleanest section of the museum. Like literally, if I were to stand here and look around, right, and I were to stand here and I were to turn, like not a single dang censorship around. Congratulations. No one wants to censor the Egyptians except for who are the rivals? The Hittites or whatever. Except for that Moses guy who ran away. He wouldn't be a big fan. And then the history of the furry fandom over there. Obviously, everyone's fine with that. Very, very fitting. I think that's perfect. Like the whole thing, we went over that. But I'm not going to relook at all the stuff that was like there because obviously we've done that video. But congratulations to this whole section. You did it. You did it, fam. So the only other bit of censorship up here, and this goes into like the sort of pile of things that he was asked. So this was the display by Paco Panda. And you can see the area rug by Paco Panda here. He had gotten rid of the wall thing back there, but I'm sure you can. I'm sure there was things, and then Paco Panda's an interesting one. So this one definitely does. Now I will spoiler alert. This one does fall under the paradigm of censorship, but it also has an interesting kind of justice angle. So we'll go over that after I read this here. So yes, the artist was asked to be censored. Paco Panda is a full-time furry fandom artist from Yankee tongue. Guadalajara. If I pronounce that wrong, then that's why I will be replaced by artificial intelligence. Joking. Mexico, Guadalajara, Mexico, who has been creating art, donating to charities, volunteering, and vending at conventions for over 2 decades. His marker and acrylic traditional piece, Borderless World, features 106 characters in a map of the world with plenty of furry characters as a year-long project and donated to the fandom. An avid supporter of the community, Paco's art is heralded for its timeless quality and mass appeal. However, fandom trolls have taken issue with a few mature-themed arts that Paco had drawn over 2 decades ago. Taste for such art is divisive, but most are in agreement attacking artists harms the community as a whole. Artists adored by Babyfur's ABDL members alike often face scrutiny from the community as well as payment processors and platform leaders. Artists may move their galleries or swap platforms when harassment increases, but there is significant delay between those responsible for engaging in harassment campaigns. Recent legislation in the United States has blocked payment processors from making decisions regarding what types of artistic content can be processed, eliminating censorship in the legal sphere. But trolls and hatred persist. Targeted individuals can remain the target of harassment and defamation forever when they are not processed through legal means. Defamation, cyberbullying, and harassment are illegal. So on the last bit there, on the last paragraph, I'll say I have mixed feelings about it because I don't think that the law that the United States has put forward towards payment processors necessarily has to do with art and more to do with political ideology and the enactment of political ideology. I think the big when furries say payment processor censorship, and someone from a Politico podcast activist sort of thing says payment processor censorship, they're both talking about, and particularly in right-wing circles, this is where it kind of gets like one's going for one, one's going for the other. Both have the thing that they want in mind, and so they're saying it's all positive all the time. But I think that here's the thing: we're talking about this United States thing. It probably more has to do with the fact of Donald Trump wanting to make sure that people who are loyal to him don't get censored by payment processors when they move forward to enact things that are a bit beyond the legal means in certain ways. So I think that's that a part of me thinks that that's the reason, especially given certain context clues. That being said, so if you're an artist who's reading this and going, "Oh, thank God," careful, because things still happen. There was the recent issue with what was it called? What's the other one that's not Patreon? Subscribestar, where they were like, if you have legs that look like these, no adult work with legs that look like these. We will no payment for you. So be careful. Don't think it's over because something said, some law says that that's the thing. Or people's interpretation of what they believe the law wants. Yeah, be careful about that. But I will, here's the thing. People are going to self-censor and do things, and individuals can not deal with baby furs or ABDLs if they don't want to. That's fine. There's a difference between doing that and going forward and harassing them. That's true. And that definitely would fall under the paradigm of censorship. I do believe that but also I think that this is censorship that actually harms not only, people who want to draw younger looking characters in safer work and it draws underage characters in general who are in safer work contexts. It's harmful to them. Because he's like, well, he drew those characters in more provocative ways over a long time ago, but then they stopped, right? And that's the important thing. They stopped, right? They did something that they were like, you know what? Either they said, whether they agreed begrudgingly or agreed full-heartedly and said, well, I'm not going to draw that kind of content anymore. It's kind of a bad message to continue to bother them, right? And continue to bother them about the past in that way. If it's like, hey, this is a person who, took that, took the idea or took the criticism of him drawing art like that and took it to heart and changed themselves, and then you continue to say, well, that person shouldn't be put up anywhere, or we shouldn't put this person on a pedestal because they did that one bad, they did things that we didn't like over a few decades ago, even though the thing that we didn't like is not illegal and it didn't harm anybody directly, unlike certain files that we've talked about on this channel. So like, if somebody's moving and making changes in the right direction, it is very detrimental to hold their feet to the fire as if it was still 2 decades ago. And in other words, like, I think certain individuals have a power grudge, and like they will say, well, I have power, I must punish them for something they were never punished for. They should have been punished for it. They were, they probably were punished for it. They were like closer to the thing. They were not, probably told no. And now it's like, well, it's been several decades. I have no evidence that they have gone back on their word. So it's like, it's censorship and it's harsh. It's to the point where, in my opinion, like, it's not good for either side. It's not good for, it's not good for people. It's not good for artists who draw younger characters in safer work things. And it's not good for redemption. And it's not good for people who want to, enact justice against folks that draw underage characters in unscrupulous things, right? Because then it's like, if there's no difference on how you're going to treat Paco Panda and a current artist who does that, then what's the point? What's the point of redemption? There is none. So to me, that's my opinion on that. As I said, there's definitely elements of censorship in some of these things. There's definitely elements of things that you have to like look into more details on. So one of the interesting things from the video is like the Mary character was saying like the trees out here have like political shapes, so take the trees out. And none of these signs explain if that was an actual complaint. And this is where like artistic form can kind of blur the lines a little bit, because I believe most of the things on the video are exaggerated caricatures of things that were actually requested. But the tree thing, I don't think it was, but like they were like, oh, we want to make things look gloomy, so let's take the tree tops off. But then we're gonna like put it as like Mary asked that to be censored. And now the maze in the middle now has a more shining reference. All right, so we're gonna go downstairs. Not, as I said, not too much down here either. There's like 2 things, and then we'll call this video part 1, and then we'll go into the heart of the museum for part 2. I'm moving slowly so that you don't get dizzy. You're welcome. So this is the under construction area under the museum. I did notice an interesting glitch for the censorship, which is sort of a spoiler alert for next time. The video game thing got censored. And his box and the way he set it up, the cartridges fell through the floor. So there's like Mario 64 down here, and I don't even know what that one is. If I grab it, is it going to like fall through the ceiling? So this is what, Gecko? And then I'm going to drop Gecko. And then Is that going to try to respawn? Can I see it fall from the ceiling? That'd be pretty cool. Because usually when it respawn, like when you move it around, it tries to respawn. Or maybe he turned that off. I guess he turned that off. But yeah, so there's like some games down here. Titus Fox, Gex, Majora's Mask, or Macarena. Oh, no, Conker's Bad Fur Day. All right, so back on course. The Ofrenda. Oh, shoot. Hold on. Oh, hold on. I'm going to have to run in there and, like, hit the button. Can I hit the button? Or do I have to mute myself? Hold on. Let me turn the world volume down on my thing. All the way down. There we go. There. Now it's safe. The copyright. Watch out. All right. So, Ofrenda being censored. Yes, this display was asked to be censored. The Furry Family Ofrenda is a magnificent project of ambitious undertaking to honor the fallen members of our fandom. For many Mexican furries, their inclusion in the virtual Furry Museum, as well as the lasting effects of all their efforts and contributions, remains one of the most significant cross-culture displays. However, many have taken issue with the presentation of memorials in the virtual Furry Museum. Those who desire a museum without grief, sorrow, or loss may find more enjoyment in the museum's many other rooms, but this place is meant for the fallen. Furries have learned about Dia de Muertos. Again, my Yankee tongue, I don't speak Spanish, but I believe that's Day of the Dead, just because Muertos is more like, I do understand linguistics and like etymology. So Dia de Mortis and mortal, right? So the word mortal is derived from mortality, and like, so mortis is probably derived in that similar tone. So Day of the Dead, about Day of the Dead, and honored their loved ones on tours. We've hosted events where people did celebrate and honor the dead. Some have arrived in the museum specifically to use the services here to communicate with the dead and process grief in their own way. And for some, the individuals on display are their own friends and members of their own furry family. So, like, so this is the thing. He couldn't take this one down because there's a lot of stuff. So you can actually peek through the curtain here and see it. So this is a cool little display of like a model of a snapshot of the Furry Ofrenda, like a few published in November of 2020. So like that was when the world was published. The Ofrenda was published. So the Ofrenda continues to be updated. And is a great, and obviously part of the museum, and like having it here is excellent. I have no qualms about it. Obviously, I'm fine with the good, the bad, and all the between. Obviously, some people aren't, and that's fine. Did they ask for it to be removed? It doesn't seem that way, and it would be really, really weird if they did. It would be like if somebody said, take this out. That'd be a little beyond the pale. So I think it's more like, I don't even think it falls in the wheel. I think it's like, oh man, this is so sad. Oh, like, oh, that's so sad. Oh, and like, so like, they don't know, like certain, I think for certain furries have an issue with processing certain emotions. Whether it's because it's not that they don't have empathy or anything like that. It's just that like they process grief differently than most other people. So like hanging out around sad things can make them a little bit awkward. And so like they feel awkward, so that they kind of present that awkwardness and like, oh, this is so sad. Oh, man, oh, this is too bad. I don't want to be here. Oh, like, or stuff like that. I don't think I can go around this way. This path has been censored. Can't go that way. Got to go the other way. But basically, I think that like, I don't think that ever happened. I don't think if somebody criticized that it was sad, that could have happened. I guess that would fall under criticism. It's like, this is sad, and it's like a negative thing, and that doesn't help anybody or contribute anything. That could fall in the criticism category. But I don't there's no indication on that thing that they were asked to remove it entirely. So for the last thing of the night, for this video anyway, and then we'll do our part 2. There's a shortcut. I have a shortcut. Whee! There is the shrine for Sisybil. And so you can see that you can't walk out to it currently. And it's turned off. Now, I'm going to take a look at it first, and then we'll read the thing. So this is, you can see that there are the ferrets on the wall. There is the thing. The biggest fan pun up top. Not moving still. And obviously the statue's not there and those things. So it's not censored. It's in a particular status. And I think this was a cool little thing. And we're going to read why, and I'm going to explain why I thought that was a cool way of doing this particular display. Because they didn't censor. They didn't like put a big freaking blob over it. But they did change some things about it. So, yes, this display was asked to be censored. We'll be the judge of that. So many people have shared their memories of one of the... I gotta lean my head back for this. I'm not used to doing that. So many people have shared their memories of one of the fandom's greatest founders, a personal friend to so many and many more by extension of his impact on the creation of both the anime and furry fandoms. No other than... and also Fred Patton, for the anime fandom particularly. No other memorial exists to honor the legacy of Mark Silas Sable Berlino, nor presented his accomplishments more beautifully or symbolically appropriate. Many tears were shed in this room, and as we recounted, I don't think you need to see the memories of a great man. Some individuals have raised concerns that Silas did not want to see himself as a leader or anyone greater than just another one of the guys. This is evident in his early conference name tag showing no practical labels for co-director, and his desires to find fandoms before making them. Others expressed dismay in what they believe was a refusal to present the bad parts of Silas. During Silas's waning year, he wanted to make sure people knew the truth of the creation of the furry fandom, as so many people had come with fictitious stories about the reality of the groups and the mindsets in the 1970s and 1980s, particularly homophobic groups and groups downplaying the role of adult art during the era. It was Silas's dying wish to see the virtual Furry Museum completed, including his own memorial room. The room you're seeing now is the closest recreation I can bring to what he saw at that time before I finished the design of the room, before I had received the files for his avatar, and before I could construct any of the special rainbow effects. It was simply a room filled with Martins. And that last part, the first part kind of gets a little like, I'll say this, a little hammy. It's like, but that's a criticism. It's not a critique. It's a criticism. It's like, this is the best thing ever for Merlino, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure, it's pretty cool. But yeah, and I do appreciate the room, and it's very nice and it's very well done. The artist put a lot of work and effort into it. And you know, I think it's something he should be proud of, but he clearly is. You can tell by that first paragraph. But yeah, I'll let him have that. So, and as I said, that's criticism and sort of silly tongue-in-cheek. But, like, the cool thing is, like, the last paragraph, it's saying, like, this is the room that I showed him, like, before, the last time he saw this room, before he died. Which is kind of, like, it's, like, and as I go through and I've been criticizing and, you know, we'll be throwing my own critique around and criticisms and... I won't be like, I'm trying not to, I don't like censorshipping things. People can draw their own conclusions on things and topics and having different perspectives. But what I will say is like, it's like this right here makes a little bit worth it. Like, cause this actually adds to like most of the censorship stuff doesn't really add to anything. It kind of adds some discussion, maybe a little bit. but this actually adds a little interesting, like, director's commentary kind of a thing, and then that is some of the elements of the stuff upstairs. For people who have already seen the museum, people can probably get more out of it. But this is something where it's like, oh, this is approximately what he saw, like the room that he saw before he passed away. So if that is the case, then yeah, perhaps like the person was okay with having themselves displayed like this, because that context was not like even when I was walking through the room the first few times, it's like, is this something he would have wanted, like, to have such like an extravagant sort of like memorial room, and for himself like that. And I don't know, because I'm not size Sybil, so like, but I can see other people like going like, is this a bit much, right? And that is this a bit much is a criticism. It's not like adding anything, and it's also coming from a place of ignorance, which sometimes criticism does come from a place of ignorance. It's like, for instance, if like I made that criticism in my own head and to myself, and maybe like some other like friends would tell me that same criticism when we visited this room. And it's like, but it comes from a place of ignorance, because like, I'm not size Sybil. I don't know whether he'd appreciate or think it's a bit much. Like, I can't speak for him. I can't speak for, and most people can't speak for the dead, because the dead, are dead. We don't have that ability unless we're Miss Cleo or something. And even then, it's like, that's probably not the case. Bias. Anyway, but yeah. So that being said, that's going to be the end of the first video. So next one's going to go into the meat and potatoes of it and get into the big room. So I hope you guys enjoyed yourselves and enjoyed this first part, and I hope to see you on part 2 if you want to see more. If you want to see this for the museum, you'll have to hurry up. I think he's going to change it back at the end of April. So see you on part 2.